Maybe it's not in this model then. Already looked in here. Couldn't be. Oh, I remember. It's in the spare bedroom. Flight. Now we can talk about covering the model. I don't think either one of these coverings truly replaces the classic look of tissue, but I don't care for the ephemeral qualities of tissue. Couple years in the sun and it gets brittle, you put your finger right through it, no matter how gentle you are with it. So some people might argue this, but this is a good enough simulated tissue look that this is what I'm going to use for the same amount of time you put into a covering job. I have models with these coverings that are, some of them are more than 20 years old and look as good as the day I covered them. Both of these are 1 ounce per square yard. You have to use balsa lock and a brush and apply it to the frame to adhere it. I also think the light span is a little bit closer to the look of tissue. It's a little bit flatter color. Cover light's a little bit shinier. Color choices, I have orange, olive, red, white. I have blue, yellow, and a classic cream color. I have about the same choice of colors with cover light, with the addition of black and silver. I gotta think about this a little bit. To be honest, I haven't really figured out what color I'm gonna go with. In the meantime, there are a couple details on the frame that I have to do before it's fully ready to cover. It's completely sanded. I've fit everything, but there are a couple things that were on the print that I don't have yet on the plane. One of those are right on the wing here, where the trailing edge and the ribs meet. On the print, they had triangle gussets at every rib, all the way down the length of the wing. But at the dihedral and polyhedral brakes, there's larger triangle gussets. I'm going to put those gussets in for torsional rigidity, twisting, but I'm not putting all the triangle gussets all the way down the wing. I don't think it's necessary. I have several other models that don't have those gussets, but I will put those gussets in at the brakes. Also, I need to sheet maybe 2 bays here. One for sure for mounting the DT, the dethermalizer. I could put on the bottom, although I think on the side is a more convenient location when you're getting ready to launch a plane, on the left side. So I need to sheet a bay or 2 there. And the other detail I want to address before I cover it is I want to put this block in here and make an adjustable pad for stabilizer tilt, and see how I have to sheet that in, blend it in for the covering, have that worked out before I cover it. I have all the gussets, polyhedral brake, dihedral brake. The grain on a gusset must go 45 degrees. It's the strongest gusset. Looking ahead to when I cover the wing and making a slight modification here. My fuselage is about that wide, so the rubber bands that hold the wing down will be pulling right across these open bays here and pulling on the covering. So making a slight modification, putting these partial spars across here. I don't have a 1/16 by 1/8 spar sanding block, so this is 3/16. I am using this 1/16 balsa to hold this shy, so these are 1/16 by 1/8 partial spars. I have the spars cut, and this last spar, the way I spaced them, would come out on top of the these gussets. So I have these little notches cut out where they will clear these gussets, and I didn't cut the slots in those two ribs here. So now I have support for my rubber bands that hold the wing down coming across those open bays. Here's another modification I'm doing before I cover the plane. It's been on my mind a while, and that's spruce laminations on the wingtip. Normally that's something you would do when you're building the components. You would plan for that, but here's a way that you can do it afterwards. I have 1/16 by 3/16 spruce strips I've had soaking in hot water. I got 3 of them formed already. I'll show you how you can add laminated tips to a build after you already have the conventional balsa wood tips built. The other way would be to do cutouts, not do the tips, and build in your laminations. So I really want these tips to be more durable than just the balsa wood. So I've soaked them in hot water for a while, half hour, maybe an hour. Yeah, probably half hour. Time it took me to lay out these pins. And then what I do, I don't just bend them around the pins, because you'll get the dent marks from the pins and it won't flex evenly. But after soaking them, I'll flex them in my fingers, and you can feel the wood give. When I get that where it's relaxed a fair amount, so I have my fence of T-pins, and they're on the inside of the lamination, and I have the first one on the outside. And then I'll start to flex it around the pins. So where the bend is softer, I don't need the pins on the outside as close together. And I'll put more pins on the outside as I come around this sharper section of the bend. Make sure it's flat on the board. And a final pin right on the end here. Make sure it's down flat all the way around. And there's another tip formed. So right wing, left wing. And I'm also laminating tips for the stabilizer. Simple to do. Take the wing, so right side, I'm going to run my lamination from here around to here, and I'm going to inlet this. So all I did was put this flat on the board, made a mark here, traced around to where I was going to go to here, but I don't need it on the back side, and I want to keep this transition where I got sanded in the to the trail and edge. So I'm stopping this lamination right here. So I just have it marked, and then with a little excess. After they dry, glue them together and inlet the tips, stabilizer and wing, and glue them on, and then sand the radius back on there. 2 laminations of spruce along with the glue will make for an extremely strong, durable tip. To accurately inlay these laminated tips, I first took my pencil, described the line, the thickness of the laminations around the outline. Then I took my razor saw and I cut to that depth at the beginning and the end of the lamination, right to here. And I made several more cuts to depth around the wingtip. At this point, I am carving. I've started to carve out the to depth following the line, and as a reference I got these depths of these cuts also so it won't follow the wood grain and take off on me. So I'm going to cut that out on all the wingtips while I'm waiting for these to dry. There is the first wingtip sanded, ready for the lamination. You can just see trace of my scribed pencil line. These have been drying overnight. Time to take them off the board, see what they look like. Going to match up nicely, and I have extra sand to length. I use full strength tight bond too. It stronger than CA in applications like this. There is one tip of the stabilizer laminated on. When you glue the strips, first I glue the strips together, and then I placed it on here and I simply held it by hand. I wish I had a better way, but it doesn't take long. What happens when you use a water-based glue like this, it re-wets it, so it actually takes some of the kinks and dents from the T-pin fence out. Here's a close-up look of the T-pin fence now that I have the laminated tip off. There's the outline of the tip, in this case the right stabilizer tip, and I located the T-pins inside that outline thickness of the lamination. Here's a closer look at the tip laminated on the stabilizer. I have tight butt joints on both ends and throughout the tip. There's no question this is much tougher than the wingtip. And I have it centered on the tip so I can sand the radius back on it. Two things to cover that I've talked about before, but it's worth repeating, and that is sanding a harder and softer material next to each other. So that would be the spruce laminations and the balsa tips, and then generating accurate radiuses cutting the two 45-degree angles. First thing I did here was I cut the 3/16 spruce strips down to match the 1/8 inch balsa with my number 11 X-Acto. Just holding it flat, and I cut it. You sand it, you'll get that dip. And I did lightly sand it at the end, holding off a little bit just to smooth it. And then doing these radiuses, I sanded my wing profile first, and then my 45s, and I kept all three surfaces equal width. I have one tip with a 45 on it still, and the other finished sanded. So here's the 45s, and it's easy to see that I've kept the width of the 45-degree angle the same as the flat on the outside contour. And then I can see where I'm at when I blend it to this existing radius going back into this trailing edge and going into the leading edge also. Both sides. So I have established a known surface. Here is the blend with the number 11 X-Acto, and then the light sanding down to the thickness. So I'm maintaining that wingtip thickness around there. And here is the finished sanded tip. So in the light you can see that radius, the blend going back into the trailing edge and to the leading edge. The wing is done. Got it all sanded. They're tough. Listen to this. That's my aluminum sanding block. The cool thing, this was an original idea of mine. It'll actually look like a standard wing, just with inlaid spruce laminations. Here's the beautiful best wing. It has laminated tips, and you can tell it. There is no balsa tip, just the laminated tip inlaid into the trailing and leading edge. So definitely not a standard wingtip. I have my dethermalizer set up figured out and mocked up here. I have a balsa wood block that the dethermalizer will hinge against, and I have two plates, a bottom plywood plate and a top plywood plate, and the top plate has a nylon screw in it. The balsa block and the bottom plate will get glued to the fuselage after it's covered. I'll just cut out the covering and glue them down. The top plate will be glued to the rudder stabilizer assembly. So when the dethermalizer trips, that will pop up. The nylon screw will give me adjustment for stab tilt, and I'll make a piece of wire that will come down either side of the fuselage, be glued to this top plate, have a hook on it each side with a rubber band going on the fuselage to provide the spring action. Here is the wire I'm talking about with the hooks on either side and the rubber band. And here's how the dethermalizer operates when a timer trips. Pivots up against that block. Here's the stabilizer tilt setup on my gollywop. I also have this bay sheeted with balsa for my timer, dethermalizer timer. So now I have a properly prepared model ready for covering. I know this ran a little bit long, but I would rather have everything figured out. No surprises, no backtracking. So everything from here on should be straightforward, covering the fuselage, tail feathers, and the wing.